At 73, Bob Costas finally speaks up about Howard Cosell. Bob Costas was born Robert Quinlan Costas on March 22 and 1952 in Queens, New York. He grew up with an early love for sports and telling stories. From when he was young, Costas had not only a great memory for stats and background facts, but also a natural skill to talk with clearness and charm, qualities that would later make him stand out as one of the greatest sports announcers of his time. Costas went to school at Syracuse University, where he studied communication at the C. Newhouse School of Public Communications. Syracuse has long been known as a training place for great broadcasters, and Costas fit right into this tradition. While there, he got better at his craft, working on student radio and making his on-air style better. One that put together smartness, humor, and a deep respect for both athletes and audiences. His time at Syracuse built the foundation for a career that would stretch across 5 decades and bring him into millions of homes. Costas started his broadcasting career in the mid-1970s, and almost right away, he stood out for his careful preparation and special voice. After short jobs in minor league baseball announcing and at local radio stations, he quickly moved up the ranks, earning recognition at N Sports, where he would become a household name. His work went on for decades and covered virtually every major sporting event you can imagine, from the Super Bowl and the World Series to the Nationals and the Olympics. Each assignment was met with his signature blend of intelligence, excitement, and a remarkable ability to balance technical details with human storytelling, making sure that even casual viewers felt connected to the drama happening on screen. Perhaps most famously, Costas became closely linked with NBC's coverage of the Olympic Games. For more than 2 decades, he served as the main host of the network's broadcasts, guiding audiences through both moments of winning and sadness with a steady and caring hand. His presence during these global events lifted them beyond athletic competition, as he wove in history, culture, and humanity to remind viewers of the deeper meaning behind the pursuit of being the best. Few broadcasters have matched his gift for putting events in a broader picture, capturing not only the athletic achievement, but also the emotional and cultural importance beyond his Olympic legacy. Costas also cemented his place in baseball history. A lifelong fan of the sport, he became one of its greatest supporters and storytellers. His commentary on countless World Series broadcasts, along with his work on programs like Meltwork Studio 42 with Bob Costas, reflected his encyclopedia-like knowledge of the game and his deep respect for its traditions. To fans, Costas was more than just a broadcaster. He was a guardian of baseball's history, keeping its stories alive and accessible to new generations. Throughout his career, Costas received numerous honors that showed his contributions to sports journalism. He earned multiple Emmy Awards, the Kurt Gowdy Media Award from the Basketball Hall of Fame, and the Ford C. Frick Award from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Among many others, each award was not only proof of his technical excellence, but also the respect he commanded from peers, athletes, and audiences alike. His career serves as a reminder that true greatness in broadcasting lies not just in reporting facts, but in shaping stories that last long after the final whistle. After decades of lending his voice to some of the game's most memorable moments, Costas returned once again to the national stage during the 2022 Major League Baseball season, taking on a role that reminded audience of his lasting presence in the sport. That year, he provided play-by-play commentary for TBS's Tuesday Night Baseball package throughout the regular season, a move that made viewers happy. Woe had long connected him with baseball's golden television years. Beyond the regular season, Costas became a central figure in TBS's postseason coverage, serving as the studio host for the American League Championship Series and taking the play-by-play microphone for the American League Division Series matchup between the Cleveland Guardians and the New York Yankees. The importance of this assignment was not lost on longtime followers of the sport. It marked the first time since the 2000 ALCS on NBC that Costas had called an entire postseason series, showing both his lasting skill and his deep historical connection to the game. 2 years later, in 2024, Costas once again found himself in the postseason spot, this time calling the American League Division Series on teams between the New York Yankees and the Kansas City Royals. While the matchup itself carried its own drama and storylines, much of the conversation during the broadcasts shifted toward Costas' own performance behind the microphone. Critics and fans alike noted a delivery they described as monotony and a style that to some appeared disconnected from the intense unfolding on the diamond. For a broadcaster known for his sharp insights, poetic phrasing, and emotional connection, these criticisms struck a surprising chord, suggesting that perhaps the passage of time had dulled some of the energy that once made his commentary so electric. The reactions were split. Some defended Costas' measured approach as a trademark of his professionalism, while others saw it as evidence that his best years as a play-by-play announcer had passed. In the wake of that olds, Costas made an announcement that closed a major chapter in his broadcasting journey. He would be retiring from calling Major League Baseball games. For a man who had been soundtrack to countless baseball memories, from summer nights at Thibault Park to October classics under the lights, this decision meant a lot. In the booth, it marked not only the end of his own time as a baseball voice, but also the closing of a certain era in televised sports history when his clear narration and gift for storytelling helped lift baseball from a game into a narrative that felt larger than life. His retirement left fans thinking about the many years has been framing baseball moments in words that often outlived the plays themselves. A reminder of just how deeply his voice had been woven into the fabric of America's pastime. Bob Costas' personal life has included important marriages that shaped different chapters of his journey outside the spotlight of sports broadcasting. His first marriage was Tokarol Randy Krummenacher, whom he wed in 1983. This marriage lasted for nearly 2 decades, a period during which Costas was establishing himself as one of the most trusted and recognizable voices in sports journalism. Krummenacher, who largely kept a private life away from the intense media attention that surrounded her husband, supported him through the high demands of his career with NBC Sports, which included covering big events such as the Olympics, the Super Bowl, and the World Series. The relationship saw the couple raising 2 children together, son Keith Michael Costas and daughter Taylor Costas, both of whom would later build their own careers in sports media, clearly highlighting their father's passion for athletics and storytelling. However, despite the long years they spent together, the marriage eventually ended in divorce in 2001. The split marked the closing of a personal era for Costas. Even as he continued to do well professionally, several years later, Costas found love again, this time with Jill Sutton, a woman who became not only his spouse, but also a vital source of companionship and stability as he moved into a more experienced phase of his life and career. The couple married in 2004, and their union has been characterized by warmth, devotion, and a shared enjoyment of quieter home life, particularly as Costas began to scale back his on-air presence after decades of constant travel and broadcasting schedules. Sutton has often been described as deeply supportive of Costas, accompanying him to events and helping balance the demands of a life so frequently under public scrutiny. Unlike his first marriage, which played out during the peak years of his career, Costas' second marriage happened during a period of reflection and gradual stepping away from the daily grind of network television, allowing him to focus more on personal happiness and family. Together, Costas and Sutton have kept a strong and steady partnership that has lasted for more than 2 decades, demonstrating the broadcaster's ability to build lasting love after the challenges of his earlier marriage. At 73 years old, Bob Costas, one of the most recognizable and respected voices in American sports broadcasting, finally chose to open up about Howard Cosell, the legendary and often controversial sports announcer who shaped an era of television. Costas, who had spent decades keeping his thoughts measured when it came to Cosel, decided that the time had come to speak honestly about a man who had cast a long shadow over both the industry and the generations of broadcasters that followed. Howard was unlike anyone else, Costas said, and you can't really tell the story of sports on television with it telling the story of Howard Cosell. For Costas, reflecting on Cosell was not just an exercise in nostalgia. It was a recognition of how Cosell's larger-than-life persona had changed what it meant to be a sports announcer. Howard wasn't interested in being liked, Costas admitted. He wanted to be heard, he wanted to be respected, and above all, he wanted to be seen as honest, even if his honesty was harsh. Those words reveal much about Cosell's place in sports culture. Unlike many of his peers, Cosell often leaned into confrontation rather than retreat from it, and his sharp-tongued critique could make athletes, coaches, and even viewers upset. Yet, in Costas' eyes, that willingness to be blunt was both Cosel's greatest strength and his greediest weakness. Costas also acknowledged that while men in the business tried to copy Cosel's style, few truly understood it. People think Howard was just loud or bombastic, Costas explained, but there was substance behind the bluster. He had a lawyer's precision when he made his arguments, and when he called out hypocrisy in sports, he usually had ethics to back it up. In Costas' view, this combination of flair and intellect is what made Cosel endure in the cultural memory long after his voice left the airwaves. Of course, Costas was also willing to point out the complexities of Cosel's personality. He could be incredibly difficult, admitted. Howard was self-absorbed. Heck will dominate a room, and sometimes it was hard for anyone else to get a word in. But at the same time, he was capable of real kindness and loyalty, especially to those he believed in. Costas noted that many young broadcasters, himself included, watched Cosel closely, not just to learn what to do, but also what not to do. He was a textbook in contradictions, Costas said. You could admire him one moment and be frustrated by him the next. The two men's paths, though separated by a generational gap, eventually crossed in the hallways of broadcasting. Costas, a rising young voice in the late 1970s and early 1980s, observed Cosel as the elder statesman of sports television when I was starting out. Costas remembered Howard was already a fixture. He had been there for Muhammad Ali's rise, for Monday Night Football's golden age, for all those moments that defined sports in America. And to a young broadcaster, it was clear that he had set the bar in terms of relevance. Still, Costas did not shy away from acknowledging the controversies that surrounded Cosel. He said things that today would never make it on the air. Costas reflected. Sometimes his words were careless, sometimes they were deliberate provostin. But he always believed he was telling the truth as he saw it. Costas added that while Cosel's remarks often sparked outrage, they also forced important conversations. Howard had a way of making sports about more than just the game. He connected sports to culture, politics, and society. That's part of why he mattered so much. As Costas looked back at 73, his reflections carried the weight of someone who had spent nearly half a century behind the microphone, carefully shaping his own legacy in contrast to Cosel's. I learned early on that I wasn't Howard Cosell, and I didn't want to be, Costas admitted. My style was different, more restrained, more conversational. But I do think I owe part of my career to the doors Howard opened. He showed that a broadcaster could be more than just a play-by-play guy or a cheerleader. He showed that you could be a commentator, a personality, even a cultural figure. Perhaps the most revealing part of Costas' reflections came when he summed up his feelings with a mix of admiration and distance. Howard was a pioneer, Costas concluded. He made mistakes, he made enemies, but he also made history. And if you were in this business, whether you liked him or not, you could ignore him. By finally speaking openly about Cosel, Bob Costas not only offered a personal tribute to one of the most polarizing figures in broadcasting history, but also shed light on the ways in which Cosel's legacy still lingers for a man who had built his own reputation on thoughtful commentary, eloquence, and restraint. Costas' reflections at 73 were not only a window the past, but also a reminder of how each generation of broadcaster stands on the shoulders of those who came before, warts and all.